stand in the gap moment. And that's what I was talking about when I started, in that there are certain issues that have come up, and that we need to talk about, because the truth needs to be told about certain things. But first, I want to set it up by reminding you, or at least those who've been with us. Do you recall when we studied what we call the Revelation Project, and we talked about the four horsemen of the apocalypse?
Oh, yes.
Well, you should, because the four horsemen of apocalypse, there were four horses and four riders on the horses. White horse, the rider came out with a bow, and he went on into the earth and he was conquering. Red horse, blood and war. And the main thing I want to raise about that horse is that it's about war. It was kingdom versus kingdom. The black horse was famine, and then the pale horse was death and hell. And the pale horse, it can be associated with disease, pestilence. So you say, why are you bringing all that up? Well,
I want to know.
well, let me take you a little further before I put it all together. We all studied the Garden of Eden, right?
Yes.
Adam and Eve, and how they used to walk through the coolness of the day in the garden with God. They were connected to God. They had an unusual for us connection with God. And God would walk with them, talk with them, associate with them, and all that. And there was no division. However, there came a division because they basically messed up their connection with God. They started believing something else, and believing something God told them not to do. And they did it. They believed what was not true. And see, they believed what was not true, and what that means is, and symbolizes, is that until they lost their connection with God, they were connected to the truth. And when they lost that connection with God, they were susceptible to things other than the truth. And the devil was working to get them to believe what was not true. Now, but that's what the devil does. He works to get you to believe a lie regardless of the facts. And that starting to bring us up to where I'm going with this thing, is there are certain things out there that are happening in this world today that we need to address. You know, we have this thing, this white supremacy, that's systemic racism at its a certain level, but then just outright white supremacy. And in this country, where they don't believe that all people are created equal. They don't believe that the country belongs to all people, but it belongs to them. And they'll fight to the death to keep it. See, we have to understand that that's the truth of what they believe. And you say, well, how do they believe all that? Well, that's what they believe. They fell for the scheme of the devil. And why did that happen? Remember what I said, when Adam and Eve were walking through the coolness of the day in the garden, they had a connection with God. And what we studied in Revelation is that after Adam and Eve ate the apple, after the fall of man, that connection to God, his spirit connected to us, was severed. And it's only connected again once you are born again. And then that connection is there. And then the God's spirit will connect with your spirit, and you're receiving true information from God. Now, you still have the ability to receive the untrue information from the world, but the spirit of God's truth overwhelms the world's truth, and therefore you walk in the truth. Now, if you're not connected, Until you get born again, then you believe anything. You believe what the world tells you because you're not getting that information from God into your spirit. So let's and you say, okay, you've taken us down this road. Now where are you going with this? Well, let me show you where I'm going with this. Let's go to our stand in the gap moment, of course. But if I can get a transition slide. Then we'll go where we need to go today. And here we are. Let's go.
She doesn't believe the 2020 presidential election. She's challenged the, fact that President Trump lost, and she's promoted the big lie about election fraud. She's also endorsed executing Democratic lawmakers on Facebook in 2018 and 2019. She's also suggested that the mass shootings in Las Vegas and Parkland were so-called false flag operations, in other words, fakes. Green has now been rewarded for all of that with a seat on the House Education and Labor Committee. This morning, we are seeing this video before Green was elected to Congress of her harassing Parkland massacre survivor David Hogg on his way to talk to lawmakers about gun reform.
David, why are you supporting the red flag laws? If Scott Peterson, the resource officer at Parkland, had done his job, then Nicholas Cruz wouldn't have killed anybody in your high school, or at least protected them. Why are you supporting red flag gun laws that attack our Second Amendment rights? And why are you using kids as a barrier? Do you not know how to defend your stance? Sean Watkins. He's got nothing to say. Sad. He has nothing to say because there really isn't anything to say, you guys. He has nothing to say because he's paid to do this. Guess what? I'm a gun owner. I'm an American citizen. And I have nothing, but this guy with his George Soros funding and his major liberal funding has got everything. I want you to think about that. That's where we are. And he's a coward. He can't say one word because he can't defend his stance.
Joining us now is David Hogg. He is the co-founder of the March for Our Lives. David, great to see you, as always. That was March of 2019. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember seeing her and what you were thinking?
Yeah, I absolutely remember that. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to keep a straight face and practice my mindfulness meditation that I've often done to help cope with my PTSD and, my ADHD as well. And it was actually really helpful in that regard because we can see in that video they're clearly trying to get a rise out of me and the fellow activists that I'm with by asking incredibly triggering questions, saying the name of my shooter and the name of the shooter at my high school and, stuff like that. So, sometimes it's just, as I was told growing up, it's just better not to respond to bullies and just walk away.
I don't know how you did it, David. I don't know how you did it. And she was baiting you so much and she was relentless and following you. She was heckling you. Obviously, you had survived the Parkland school shooting, so she's bringing all of this up. She also said during that she said, I have a concealed carry permit. I carry a gun, she said, for protection. How did you interpret that? Did you hear that as a threat when she was chasing you saying that?
Oh, absolutely. But, what I always say to myself, Allison, is that if they shoot me, they prove my point. And the reality is they can't kill a movement because the reality with that as well, and, it's funny when they say that we're paid off and stuff, and I can tell you that there's no amount of money that you could ever pay any of us to do this work because that's not why we do it. None of us want to be doing this, but we have to because sadly corrupt elected officials like Marjorie Taylor Greene are in Congress and would rather choose to protect guns than children. And it's just a horrific reality. Can I just point out how ridiculous it is that it's on the survivors of gun violence to stand up to gun violence, to be the ones to try to end it? Why do we have elected officials if that's the case? Why can't they do their jobs? And, she talks as well about, saying that she's an American citizen, almost as if implying I'm not just as American as she is, or any of us aren't, simply for not wanting our friends to die anymore. That's just horrific and disgusting.
There's a lot of absurdities of this and discussing things. Though also she says, look at him. He gets to talk to Congress people. I have nothing. she doesn't mention that she and her husband had a multi-million-dollar construction company. I mean, she acts as though she has nothing. That's not true. And the fact that you at 18 were able to get in and speak to lawmakers, and she, with her crazy heckling, couldn't. I mean, I guess she's just very resentful about that.
Yeah.
Well, let's pause it at that point in time, because I think you get the crux of what I'm trying to say there. This woman, and if you didn't know, she's a QAnon believer. Okay, and that's the thing that has just been coming into focus here, here recently. QAnon and the craziness of it, for her to take whatever belief that she has and chase down this young man who survived the shooting at his school. I mean, he's just lucky to be here, and he wants to make a stand against guns and all that, and so that people can be protected, and that, you know, people don't have to go through what he went through. And that incident causes him to have nightmares and PTSD and all that kind of thing. But I mean, whenever he thinks about that, but in light of that, he still is willing to bring his message to the legislature and all that, to try to get things changed. And here she comes and tries to chase him down, calls him a coward, and she has rights that are over and above his right not to be subject to a mass shooting and all that kind of thing. It makes no sense. But you got to understand where this type of thought comes from. You say, you may be understanding why I started this out with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and all that, because of what's going on out there. And what I want to bring into focus right now is this QAnon thing. QAnonymous. QAnon. You know, the people, these people believe something that some anonymous government representative or whatever was spreading across the internet. So that's why it's QAnonymous. Okay, so they think of the guy that started. His name's Q, or maybe there was a couple people named Q, but they're anonymous, so they don't know exactly who they are. But they're supposed to have some information and some insight. I actually looked up the QAnon, because I kind of pride myself on being up on current events and all that, but I didn't really know what QAnon was, and I didn't know why I didn't know, you know. But I looked it up, and it's QAnon is they believe that there's a secret cabal. I looked up cabal.
What is that?
Well, I kind of heard. I've heard the word before, but it's a small group of secret plotters, is what it means. Okay, and they say there's this secret cabal of plotters who they say that there's a cabal of Satan worshiping cannibalistic pedophiles is running a worldwide secret sex trafficking ring, and their QAnon followers are trying to expose them. This cabal. They're trying to expose this cabal, and that Donald Trump is leading, trying to expose this cabal, and that the secret the cabal is trying to stop Donald Trump from exposing them, and they have gotten Donald Trump kicked out of the presidency and all that. And so, which they never thought was going to happen, because they knew Donald Trump was the one that was sent to expose this thing. And some of them had to leave the QAnon because they believed that would never happen to Donald. But Donald is kicked out now. So here we have a belief in something that they can't show any facts of it, because I believe they tried to say that somehow Hillary Clinton is involved in this, drinking blood and of these children or whatever, and that I guess Obama and a bunch of them are in cahoots with it and all that. And so here we have. Remember, when you're not connected to the Holy Spirit, you don't get the truth from God. And so you're falling for everything that's coming from the world, even if there's no facts to support it. Does that not sound like the devil in charge of that situation?
The devil is definitely in charge of that situation.
I mean, what do we have? Why did I bring in the the four horsemen? Look what's happening to us right now.
Yeah,
You got the white horse who's going out and conquering, meaning that there's somebody or something that is going out into the world and overcoming people's wisdom and their sense. And that's how it's conquering. You start with the mind. And then you got the red horse, the blood and war. And I brought out the fact that part of that is kingdom versus kingdom. QAnon, white supremacists, democracy, kingdom versus kingdom, black horse of famine. I saw pictures of people standing in line in America to get food during this pandemic, because that's what happens in a pandemic. That's what happens when pestilence is running wild. And then that pale horse, that's the pandemic. And the rider was death and was followed by hell. Because if you look at what we're going through with this pandemic, like I said, 10 months of this, whoever thought? 10 months? And they don't really have a handle on it right now. They got a vaccine out that supposedly is going to help us out. However, they have the people in charge had no idea how to get it to people, and we're finding out that white people are getting it at a much higher rate than black people, and that's not because black people don't want to take it. That's because the white people and their white privilege are stepping up first in line to get it.
Not to mention the millionaires that flew their private plane and just stepped up in line and claimed to be hospital workers or something. I hope they go to jail.
And not only that, it's as this thing is out of control in its 10th month, the death rate is rose so high because people weren't listening to what they need to do to stop this thing. They had to do whatever they had to do over the holiday season and all that, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and all that. And they want to reopen things and they want to do this and do that as people are dying, and they're projecting we're going to have over 600,000 now, which was unbelievable. You remember Trump said it was only be 15 people. It's going to be gone as soon as it gets warm. The virus, as we think we're getting a handle on it, it starts to mutate. And they're saying, well, the vaccine that we have now, we don't know how good it's going to be against the mutation. And if we don't get this in people's arms real quickly, there are going to be all kind of other mutations. And therefore, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. You got to be kidding me. What are we in? That's why I brought up the Revelation study.
Yeah, the four horsemen. Well, all I want to add to that is that there are some simple things. Remember, we were talking. You said we can't do anything. It's out of our hands. It's not completely out of our hands. We can put on our masks and wear them when we go outside. We can stay socially distanced. Ain't no use of going to a restaurant or going to the coffee shop or going to the bar. Go where you have to go. Come on back home. Stay socially, just wash your hands. I mean, it's a simple thing, but if you get that virus on your hand and then put it by your face, you could introduce it to yourself. So wear your mask, socially distance, and wash your hands. That's something we can do. And when your time comes up to get your vaccination, go and get it. Go and get it.
Go and get it. Wear your mask. I mean, Marvel got us some N95 masks.
They said those cloth masks you have, they all right, they about 25%. I was like, 25%? That ain't enough. But they said the N95s are 95% effective in preventing airborne stuff from transferring in or out from you. And those N95 masks are nice. They're expensive and hard to get, but yeah, 95 is better than 25.
All right. Well, now I want one other video at this time for you to see, because you need to see it, on this QAnon nonsense. PBS.
With less than 3 months until Election Day, much of the attention has been on the presidential race. But Amna Nawaz looks at how a conspiracy theory could make its way into the halls of Congress after the election.
America's the greatest country in the world.
On Tuesday, Marjorie Taylor Greene won the Republican runoff in Georgia's 14th congressional district.
I'm a conservative Republican.
It's an overwhelmingly GOP district, so she's favored to win in November.
We have an Islamic invasion into our government offices.
But after Politico uncovered Greene's previous Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, and racist remarks about black people, GOP leaders distanced themselves, condemning her words as appalling, disgusting, and bigoted. But Republican leaders remain largely silent about Greene's support for a far-right conspiracy theory known as QAnon, support she professed in a 2017 video she deleted before her campaign launch.
Q is a patriot. He is someone that is very much loves his country, and he's on the same page as us, and he is very pro-Trump, okay?
QAnon first emerged in the months after President Trump took office, starting on fringe internet message boards before spreading to social media. Adherents allege, among other things, that the president is the target of so-called deep state actors, high-ranking officials plotting against him. The conspiracy quickly took off, and the president's supporters latched on to the mysterious Q. Signs and T-shirts appeared at Trump's campaign rallies. Last year, the FBI labeled the movement a potential domestic terror threat.
I stand with President Trump. I stand with Q and the team. Thank you, Anons, and thank you, Patriots.
But now, QAnon has firmly taken root in the 2020 campaign trail.
Honestly, everything that I've heard of Q, I hope that this is real.
Some congressional candidates, like Lauren Boebert in Colorado, promoted the conspiracy theory to friendly media outlets before later calling QAnon fake news. According to Media Matters, a left-leaning watchdog group, 20 candidates, all Republicans except one independent, with varying levels of support for QAnon conspiracies, have advanced to November's general election. And now, Marjorie Taylor Greene's name will be on the ballot as well. To look more closely at the rise and spread of the QAnon conspiracy on the campaign trail, I'm joined by Travis View, co-host of the QAnon Anonymous podcast. Travis, welcome to the News Hour. You have been following the QAnon conspiracy theory and its followers for a very long time. Let's start with the basics, though, for those who haven't been. Just explain to us, where and how did the QAnon conspiracy begin?
The QAnon conspiracy theory originated on 4chan in October of 2017, though it has its origins in Pizzagate. The basic premise is that a group of high-level military intelligence officials, close to President Trump, QAnon followers believe, are sending out secret coded messages on these image boards about this great grand battle of good versus evil, in which Trump and what they call the Q team are working to destroy a global cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles, which the QAnon community believes is controlling everything. And that includes politicians, entertainment, and the media.
And what is the end game? If you're someone who believes in this conspiracy theory, what do you believe will happen as a result of all this?
The QAnon community is awaiting two big events. One of them is called the Store, and this is supposed to be a great mass arrest event in which over 100,000 people from the highest levels of power and entertainment are arrested and face a great day of reckoning. The other event that they're waiting for is called the Great Awakening. And this is basically an event in which everyone realizes that QAnon is right the whole time. And that would allow us to enter into a great, brand new utopian age.
So, Travis, what you've just laid out seems so obviously irrational that a lot of reasonable people might just dismiss it, and yet it has picked up real speed in recent years, right? I mean, it was reported just recently that Facebook found thousands of groups and pages with millions of followers and members supporting QAnon. So what has helped to fuel this idea so well?
You know, it's a really appealing story. You happen to feel really disenfranchised, and you want to believe that the world is about to change in a really important revolutionary way. And it's also appealing because it allows the QAnon followers to believe that they can take part in this great, grand revolutionary change. They think that they're basically conducting an information war, so that by going on social media and posting QAnon memes and then spreading these QAnon conspiracy theories, they can help usher in this great awakening. And so it sounds ludicrous, and it is, but this story has a lot of appeal to people who might otherwise feel like they have no voice in the political system.
Travis, the fact that President Trump has been retweeting some of these conspiracy theories, that congressional candidates are now saying that they support these ideas and are then winning, likely ending up in Congress. What does all of that say to you about the potency of this particular conspiracy theory?
Well, there is some historical precedent for a conspiratorial movement gaining a significant share of power in Congress. All the way back in 1833, there was a party called the Anti-Masonic Party, which was dedicated to the proposition that the Freemasons were controlling the world. And they gained 10% of the House of Representatives. You know, there's always been an undercurrent of conspiracy thinking and paranoia in American politics, and occasionally it can rise up and actually get some actual significant political power. So this is just something we're seeing again.
You mentioned the Pizzagate conspiracy theory back in 2016. We should mention that has not really gone away. It tamped down a little bit, but it's resurfaced again recently. What happens with the QAnon conspiracy theory? Do you see a point at which this goes away?
No, absolutely not. You know, this is something that has started very small a couple of years ago, and it has only accelerated and gained in popularity and gained in speed. So if you go by the trajectory, I mean, this is something that will almost certainly be with us for at least a generation and probably longer.
That is Travis View, co-host of the QAnon Anonymous podcast. Thanks so much, Travis.
Thank you.
Well, you know, one of the things I took from that is that this QAnon thing has only been around for a couple of years, but it's taken off, and the sad part, which I think is the demonic part, the devilish part, even more exposed, is how it is somehow bonded together with white supremacists. I mean, if you look at those that stormed the Capitol, it was QAnon. It was white supremacists, Proud Boys, and all that. Now, what an unlikely pair, you know?
Well, they're both united for Trump.
Yes.
And what's so interesting is to hear how they interviewed these QAnon people, because one of the things that QAnon promised all of its believers was that Trump was going to continue in the presidency even after he lost, that he was going to continue. So that was what the whole thing about the January 6th. And then on January, they were like, well, okay, January 6th happened. They certified or ratified the Electoral College. But on January 20th, something's going to happen and Joe Biden's not going to be inaugurated. And then glory, he was inaugurated. And so they're saying that now the Q people are saying, well, we don't know what to think. Somebody said I got played, which they did get played. But all
it does, those some of them will leave that belief because they figured it was going to happen on January 20th. It didn't happen. So, you know, we've been played. It was all a bunch of crap and all that. But then you have the hardliners who are going to say, well, you know what? That's not the case. And they're going to double down. And they're going to get themselves another goal or another date or whatever and work toward that. The bottom line about the stand in the gap moment is that if you're not connected to God's Holy Spirit, then you're influenced by all this stuff coming through the world, and you will believe it, even if it makes no freaking sense. You'll believe it. You know?
Sister Monica said it's the devil, evil lies.
But
That's
see,
what
we
it
have to
is.
know what it. We have to know the truth behind it, and don't just dismiss it as just something that's going on that's strange over here. They're trying to take over the country. They're trying to put Donald Trump back in, and heck, we just got rid of him.
Yeah.
You know.
But they're in the Congress.
They're in the Congress,
And they're threatening.
and the Republicans are afraid to kick them out.
Well,
So, you know, just saying all that to say this. We have to always stand on the truth. Understand the truth. Tell your kids the truth. Tell your friends the truth. Don't back off of the truth, because the truth comes from God. And so long as you're connected, you're born again, connected to the Holy Spirit will be there. And remember from whence cometh your help. What can we do about all that's going on by ourselves? We can do nothing. But with God, all things are possible. And that's the only thing that we can do, really. So, you know, stand in the gap. Don't be fooled by this QAnon stuff. Because if you look real closely at some of those video broadcasts, you'll see some of our people in there.
what are they doing there?
So it can happen.
Well,
that's and enough said. I'm not gonna go back on give QAnon any more airplay after today, but it's something that's out there, and we needed to address it. We have addressed it, and we're gonna move on. We're not gonna keep playing in that mess. All I want you to do is make sure that you stay connected, because without being connected, then you'll fall for anything. All right, well, let's move on.